to tweet about Mean Gene Okerlund, saying, "I love you, brother, HH." Now in other news, Olivia Newton-John is in good health, according to her niece, Toddy Goldsmith, who's 56, denied reports in an Instagram post Wednesday that Olivia Newton-John, her aunt, who is now 70 years old, is close to death. She wrote, "Just giving you the heads up that Livy is in good health, so let's leave that distressing rumor where it belongs." Now, tabloids had reported last week that Newton-John was clinging to life amid her ongoing battle with cancer. The actress confirmed in September she was battling the disease for a third time. The Grease star was initially diagnosed with breast cancer in 1992 and was diagnosed with the disease again in 2013. Doctors discovered a tumor in her lower back in 2017. For now, that is going to be the entertainment wrap-up here in the Inland Empire. If you have a special story, you could always send it to me via social media, handle On Air Andrew. For the entertainment wrap-up, I'm Andrew Caravella.
KCAA Radio is proud to announce that the Tri-City Center in Redlands is our new home. We're fortunate to be located among some of the best businesses in the region. Among our neighbors are Ray Chiropractic, Brace Connection Orthodontist, Pain Solutions Medical Massage, Rent-A-Center, MVP Staffing Agency, Jenny Craig, Salon Centric, and many more. The Tri-City Shopping Center is located just off the I-10 between Alabama and the Tennessee exits in Redlands. The Tri-City Center is the mall with a heart. Hi folks, if you're still paying for electricity every month, it means you haven't signed up for the Inland Empire's #1 money savings program offered by Horizon Solar Power. Just call to qualify your home and Horizon will give you $100 plus pay your electric bill until 2020. It's that simple. Call, qualify, get $100 and no electric bill payments until 2020. So keep your money in your pocket and become energy independent today. Call 844-711-6996. That's 844-711-6996. Or click on one of our Stay Cool ads at kcaaradio.com. KCAA.
Live from the NBC News radio broadcasting studios of KCAA 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM, located in beautiful, sunny, but cold California. Thanks for tuning into the Water Zone this afternoon, and welcome a new year 2019. Chris, I haven't seen you since last year.
That's right, man. I don't look much older. That's
no,
right.
You don't. You haven't really aged much.
That's right.
So what did you do on New Year's Eve?
Well, we didn't go far, right, across the street. So I figured if anything happens, all I've got to do is get across the street. And we don't live on a busy street, so I felt pretty safe.
You were safe. And what time were you in bed?
Actually, pretty quickly, a little bit before 1 o'clock. So
okay. I didn't make it till noon, till the midnight.
Oh, you didn't?
No, about 11:30 was my limit.
No. We as I going across the street, there was some fireworks going on, so I kept us up for a little bit. We were watching them, right?
The only fireworks I saw from my place was the Disneyland ones.
Yeah.
Other than that, there was nothing else. We went out to a restaurant in Fullerton, and they had closed streets in 4 directions.
Yeah.
And so we went and had dinner, and then we got out about 7:45, and we walk up, and it was bitter cold and windy. I mean, really cold. And the people started coming because they said it was going to last till after midnight. And I go, we're not staying here. So we went home.
Yeah. Although we wanted to watch the fireworks, we went inside pretty quick because it was about like 35 or something. It was a cold evening.
Well, what you do is you watch the fireworks that were already in New York 3 hours ahead of time.
That's right.
So you've seen all the excitement.
Yeah.
And what I couldn't understand, because I like music, all those guys out there freezing their you-know-what's off, playing. I mean, there's no amount of money they would have paid me to.
That's right, yeah. And it was a warmer evening in New York, but you can start watching fireworks as early as 8 o'clock in the morning when New Zealand and Australia.
Yeah.
does it.
What was I going to say a couple of nights before? I know we're talking about music now, but I saw Garth Brooks on television when he played Notre Dame. He filled the place.
Yeah.
It was pouring rain and freezing, and he's out there just in a shirt with the rest of the guys, and they were awesome. They were awesome.
Thick-blooded.
Oh, Amazing. So we're moving now we are into the 2019 things, and a lot of things have happened, especially near the end of the year for Congress. And we won't talk about the big things because that's too political to get to. We don't want
stick to irrigation,
stick to irrigation,
stick to agriculture
and
water.
Yeah. So at the end of December, they completed what's called the 2018 Farm Bill.
Yep. Also known as the Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018.
And they've been working on that for a long time.
A lot of proponents, a lot of opponents to that. A year-long debate on some of the issues behind that bill. But it finally passed and was signed by the president.
And it does a couple of different things. I'll read a couple. You can
read
a couple.
Yeah.
It did funding of the Environmental Quality Incentives Program at $1.75 billion for 2019, and increasing it to a little over $2 billion for when it gets to 2023.
Yeah, I think 4 years out. Yeah.
Yep. It increases the opportunities for equipped participation in irrigation districts, and all of this is important because we got more people.
Absolutely.
And we got to find a way to feed them. And, you and I always see rebates for local water agencies for the homeowners and commercial property. But, there's so much more money and so much more water that they can save by putting it to the ag world. And, there's all kinds of new technologies aside from irrigation controllers and nozzles and things of that sort, of now vertical crop growing and things of that sort. So these are important to do. I don't know why it took so long for people in Congress to realize we need to do this.
Well, I think a part of it was there's a little bit of a swing in the potential in the industry, in the government rather, for a farm bill like this to pass. Right? I know the president probably didn't have much trouble signing it because he sees the upside of it: more production, more export of agricultural food products, grains, and supplemental products that come from that can be made in the United States.
Absolutely.
And exported.
Yeah.
And so especially
here in California, where it's a big, we could feed lots of worlds from here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Countries. The one thing. Well, not one thing. There's several things, but it increases the benefits of efficient irrigation. That's important. With the drone technology, with new sensor technology, with new controller technology, new irrigation component technology, that's going to help save the farmer lots of water and reduce his expenditures every month, but also a way to enhance his growing methodologies.
Yeah. There's a big part of this. There's a foundation out there. It's called the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research.
Yep.
They, as part of this, got a grant for, I believe, just sub $200 million.
Almost, yeah.
To do additional research on drones and on other sorts of technologies that are available in the marketplace or becoming available in the next few years.
Yeah, I think it's so important because, you look at properties and, I'm not a farmer, but just from doing the show with you and others, I've learned so much about, you can have lots of property, but you got to maximize what you can grow. Right. And can you grow crops that you can keep changing the crops from season to season because not everything grows, all year long.
Right.
So having the technology both in agriculture, biology, hydraulics for irrigation, that's could be a whole important factor.
Yeah, I agree, and I think another important factor is a lot of this new technology, you just mentioned it, right, that's coming out, right, is internet dependent or Wi-Fi dependent. You need to have broadband available, not just regionally in population centers, but also broadband available, throughout rural areas as well.
Satellite I think Hughes has the market in that for satellite communication for that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, all of these things. It's like the phones. I just heard they have 5G service now.
Yeah.
So,
that's right.
I mean, I thought a week ago it was like a 2G, 3G and 4G. Now it's got 5G. I don't know.
Well, we'll wait and see what happens, and if it gets to 100, then what do they have to do? They can call it Centennial G.
Yeah, they raised the price of the phone from $1,000. My 11-year-old granddaughter, she asked, I asked her what does she want for Christmas, and she said she wanted an iPhone X10.
10X.
Yeah, 10. Well, yeah, I don't have an iPhone. I have an Android. But I go, do you know how much those cost? They're like over $1,000, and you're only 11 years old. I don't have one.
Yeah.
but that's what they want.
Well, I think there's a great focus in the Farm Bill, and I'm glad it's passed. As you know, you and I talked about it several times on the show throughout 2018, especially with different guests. But the goal all along was to be able to focus on programs that ensure that the United States, right, becomes globally competitive with foodstuffs and agricultural equipment and all the other supplemental things that go into the industry. And if we can
get off the subsidies,
so
hey, the government pays people not to grow stuff. We want to grow stuff. We want to sell it. We want to, that booms the economy. I think. And I know that the Irrigation Association played a big part in this, in contacting different Congress people, and showing them, hey, look, irrigation is a good thing to have, but you need to do it smarter, and I think all of those things. Again, it's back to education. When you educate people so they understand what the issues are and what the results can be, then common sense and science come together and they make a good decision like this. And I'm glad it happened. I'm sorry it took so long, but I guess it's like any big entity; it takes forever.
Hey, the ink's on paper now, so it's moved forward. Of course, keep in mind that all along we talk about all these things and all the benefits that the Farm Bill will provide, but a key goal is just to make sure that the United States provides a reliable and safe food supply.
And I think, for all our listeners and people who are citizens, this really is good for the country. It's not wasting the taxpayers' money. This is something we need to have to survive, because without that, no one's going to go pay $25 for a hamburger, and and all. Some people do. Some people pay $50 for hamburgers if you get the Wagyu ones and stuff. But seriously, I mean, food's going to rise up in costs. Labor is raising fees. Manufacturing costs more. You need to be able to compensate for that, and by having efficient irrigation systems and efficient farming, that's going to help offset that and be able to provide.
And there's still a lot of old practices in place in the United States, farming practices that can be improved with efficient use of water, right?
Absolutely.
So the Farm Bill will provide, opportunities and incentives, right? So these farmers will go out and invest in more efficient irrigation systems.
And we talked about that, like in California, when the water agencies gave rebates to local homeowners. If they put that same amount of money into the farming world, we would have saved 25 times more water.
Yeah,
with the same amount
exactly.
of money.
As our ag associate Inge Basconer was saying a couple of weeks ago on the Ag Show. Very true.
Yep.
Right. That's where the biggest savings is on the ag side.
Was that your motorcycle being delivered?
I was going to ask you that. I was going to ask you the same.
I didn't know where that's coming from. Maybe it's our engineer, Nick. He went out for a ride. Nobody's operating.
You hear about these guys crashing through the front of store windows.
Yeah, that could happen.
Woo.
Well, another thing that the IA has welcomed, and so do we, is the new clean water rule, which is going to be a good preset for our upcoming guest.
Yeah.
They're defining, after how many years, it recognizes the benefits of agriculture while protecting America's water, but now the irrigation welcomes the new definition of waters of the United States.
Yeah,
so
cool.
How old is this country? And we're just defining what the water...
just defining... Yeah. What is that? Lakes and ponds and
traditional navigational waters, including territorial seas,
right?
Tributaries that contribute perennial or intermittent flow to such waters, certain ditches.
Yeah, I saw that on there. Yeah, certain ditches.
In California, they can control, if you have a puddle in front of your house, they can control that.
Yeah.
The state can take that over.
Yeah. Well, how about the guy from Colorado a couple of months ago? If it rains in Colorado, no one in Colorado owns that water except the state of Colorado.
Yeah, that's amazing. So they do certain lakes and ponds and impoundments of otherwise jurisdictional waters and wetlands adjacent to jurisdictional water. So growers, all these growers are implementing new practices and technology every day to increase their productivity so they can serve and protect our nation's water. I don't know why we need clearer definitions. Is this becoming now politically correct that we do this?
I think it gives a little more clarity, right? Really, to those that are involved in all the things that make up the scope of the Clean Water Act, right? So crop management and all that stuff, enforcement, all the things that go along with that. I mean, it's It's not just one focus.
No, I know the proposed rule states that the surface water should be regulated by federal government, while some should be protected under state law in particular, and it preserves state authority over land features. So now we're going to get into what's the federal government change, what is the state water, and then probably we'll get into what the locals are going to want to do.
Yeah. Well, again, it's a supplement to the farm bill we were just discussing, right? It really stands with the growers, right, and the ranchers, and protecting the environment and all that kind of stuff. So I think both of them are good starts to 2019, and happy to see them pass through legislation.
Yeah, I think this all is going to lead up to clean up the water, and there's lots of bad water. And actually, we have an expert coming on here in a minute after our commercial to talk about nitrates in the water. So let's take a quick little break, then we'll come back and bring our guest on. So stick around. We'll be back in just one moment. You're listening to The Water Zone on NBC News Radio. We'll be right back.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, K292FQ Riverside, and K293CF Moreno Valley.
If you knew there was a pipe cement that works better than the one you're currently using, is better for you and the environment, and costs the same or less, would you buy it? Oh, no-brainer, right? Weldon, the trusted leader in solvent cements for over 60 years, is pleased to introduce a new line of solvent cements that does all that. Introducing the Eco Series line of solvent cements for PVC piping systems. Not only does it work great and set fast, it also has 30% lower solvent emissions and less smelly fumes, a better workplace environment when you're installing pipes. But don't just take our word for it. Eco Series products are the only solvent cements that are Green Seal certified for environmental innovation for effective performance, improved working conditions, and for use with potable water. Now available in a medium-bodied fast-setting blue formula, 905 Eco, and a regular-bodied fast-setting clear formula, 900 Eco. Pick up a can today from your local distributor and see, smell, and feel the difference, just like Joe Sweat, president of Sunrise Irrigation, did. He said, after using Weldon's 905 Eco, we immediately noticed the application was smooth and there was noticeably less odor than other blue solvent cements on the market. The guys love it. To learn more about Eco Solvent Cements from Weldon, visit the website at www.weldon.com or call the Technical Service Hotline at 877-477-8327. That's 877-477-8327.
Time to take a water break and talk some water. Irrigation. Such a refreshing topic. As more and more markets face water restrictions, your customers may be hungry, or should I say thirsty, for water-saving products. For new installations, add options like drip irrigation, controllers that respond to weather data, pressure regulating heads, or heads with check valves. They all provide easy ways to differentiate your bids and win more jobs. Or for an extra stream of revenue, offer existing customers upgrades like high-efficiency nozzles, rotary nozzles, or Wi-Fi based controllers. Because when you help your customers save water, you make a world of difference for the earth and your bottom line at the same time. We'll drink to that.
Welcome back to the second half of the Water Zone show, and if anybody was watching us live, which you can at KCAAradio.com, and you can actually see us live, we'll give a wave out to there. Somebody actually called me a little while ago, before you got here, Chris, and her name is Tammy, and she wanted to, I know she's going to watch, so we'll give a little wave to her. Anyway, so now we're going to get into serious stuff. We got to be technical here, and because we have a gentleman who has a PhD, and so we have to show a lot of respect for him. Anyway, it's a nice gentleman named Christopher Jones, and he works for the University of Iowa, and we'd like to welcome Chris. Can I call you Chris, or would you like to go by Christopher?
Yeah, Chris is fine.
Okay, how you doing, Chris?
Good, thank you.
How's the weather out there?
Well, it's been very unseasonably warm here for the last week or so. So we had cold weather in November, and it's been quite warm since Thanksgiving.
Uh-huh. So why don't you give just a little background what you do at University of Iowa, and then we'll get into your specialties.
So I manage the university's network of water quality sensors that are deployed in streams across Iowa. We have about 70 sites where we're measuring nitrate, conductivity, pH, temperature, dissolved oxygen, and a few other things continuously, and that data streams in to the university, and we have a nice website where people can go and see what the water quality is right at the present time at any of these sites. And then I and some other people try to use the data and publish some original research based on the data that's being generated. So that's what I do.
So what made you, just curious, I always like to know how people got involved with what their work is. What made you go into the field that you're doing?
Well, it's been a long time since I was in school, and originally when I was in graduate school, my advisor was an atmospheric chemist and was interested in issues with the ozone, which was a big discussion topic then, not so much now. And I was interested in environmental chemistry and analytical chemistry, and I've worked in a number of places in my career. I worked in the contract laboratory business for a while, and I did consulting work for water and wastewater utilities. I worked for Des Moines Water Works, the biggest water utility here in Iowa, and of course a lot of the water issues here in Iowa are connected with agriculture, and I worked for a while at the Iowa Soybean Association before coming here, and so a lot of my career has been just spent looking at these water issues from about every angle.
Well, there's been a lot of news concerning the quality of water around the country, as we all know. Flint, Michigan, crops right out. They haven't seen any great improvement in the last couple of years. Water in various small water districts here in California are delivering brownish water to their constituents. And we see a slow move from the EPA, state and local agencies to push water agencies to remedy the problems. You have been involved with water in Iowa with respect to nitrate levels. Can you give our listeners a clear understanding of this dramatic issue? And actually, what is a nitrate for our listeners who may not know?
Well, of course, nitrate is a soluble form of nitrogen, and farmers in the modern day generally do not apply nitrate. They apply formulations of ammonia, mainly here in Iowa, anhydrous ammonia and urea, and of course, the nitrogen in those products is oxidized in the field to nitrate, the soluble form that plants can use. And so about 70% of our land area in Iowa is cropped corn and soybeans, and so we have a large area that's receiving commercial nitrogen products, and then we have an enormous number of livestock here. We're the #1 state for hogs. I think we have 23 million hogs in Iowa. We have the biggest egg production in the country. Iowa leads the nation in egg production. We have a lot of turkeys. I think we're 4th in the number of feeder cattle. And so we have a lot of manure generation that supplements the commercial nitrogen fertilizer, and we have the proverbial leaky system here. I heard you guys talking about irrigation. Irrigation's pretty rare in Iowa. It's a rain-fed system. We have too much water here in most years, and so we cope with that by installing this network of underground drainage pipes throughout our farm fields. We call them tiles here. And this tile water is the high nitrate water, and this is we don't have irrigation districts here. We have drainage districts that are formed to remove the water and maintain the infrastructure to move the water off the land to enable field work as early as possible in the spring and then to maximize crop yields. And so this tile water, again, nitrate's very soluble. After the nitrogen is oxidized from ammonia to nitrate, it's very soluble. The fertilization isn't timed with crop nutrient needs in this part of the country, and so a lot of what we put down as fertilizer and as manure is really vulnerable to loss. That nitrate gets out into streams. We have a real high-profile drinking water problem. The city of Des Moines, the largest city in the state, has the world's largest nitrate removal facility. They use the Raccoon and Des Moines rivers, and both of those are impaired for nitrate. We have about 60 other systems, public water supplies in Iowa, that are impaired for nitrate, and the Iowa Department of Public Health, I believe, has identified about 900 systems that are highly vulnerable to nitrate concentration. So yes, we do have the drinking water issue here, and it is a high-profile issue and gets discussed quite a lot.
It creates, I can't pronounce the real name of the disease. It's I can't even say it.
Yeah, methemoglobulinemia.
There you go. You got it. If you say it all the time, you get it right. But I know it by what they call blue babies.
Yeah, blue babies.
Yes.
And I guess that's something that's pretty serious in things. And
so yeah, there have not been many cases of blue baby syndrome in the United States since we implemented the Safe Drinking Water Act. Mm-hmm. And prior to that, most of the cases were not related to public water supplies, but actually related to private wells, private farmstead wells. And so the standard, the EPA standard for nitrate in drinking water is 10 parts per million as nitrogen. And really that has proven to be very protective of the infant populations that are, around these high nitrate waters. And really it's been a success, and that we've really eliminated this blue baby syndrome from our country here over the last 50 years.
Wow.
So, Chris, this is Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the show. As you were describing the concerns that you're facing in there, what do you do? What part of University of Iowa's focus, or your focus, is it just on monitoring and measuring, or is there some focus on prevention and stuff like that, or what's your primary focus in research?
So the main policy instrument to deal with these issues in Iowa is what we call the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy. A number of states in the upper Mississippi Basin have these plans or strategies designed to help farmers reduce nutrient loss from their fields. And these are all voluntary. They're not compulsory. The nutrient strategy has a science team that has identified various practices that are good things to use on the farm, on the field, to reduce the loss of nitrogen and phosphorus. And then the state allocates money every year for cost share to the farmers to adopt these practices. And so we work we at the University of Iowa and people at Iowa State University, which is a land-grant institution here that most often works with farmers. The College of Agriculture is there, but we both work with farmers to try to implement these practices, determine how well they're working, try to improve their performance, in the hopes that this is going to improve stream water quality.
Chris, do you get good? Rob. I was just going to say, Chris, do you get good voluntary participation in this, since they're not compulsory practices?
I'd say the jury is out a little bit. The state really has not allocated enough money to really make much of a dent in the problem. Like I said, we have 70% of our land area is in corn and soybeans, and so that amounts to about 23 million acres. And since the nutrient strategy was implemented in 2012, I think the most money the legislature has allocated has been about $20 million. And so, that would be less than $1 per cropped acre. And so we think, in Iowa alone, this is probably, at least $1 billion a year problem.
Wow.
And so we're a long, long ways away.
Right.
And so cover crops are one of the things that we really look at. Maybe they're almost like a silver bullet type thing, because most of these practices do not provide an agronomic benefit to the farmer, and so there's not
a
lot of incentive there for them to adopt. If it causes them inconvenience or it costs them money, what's their incentive to adopt? Now, cover crops can provide some soil health benefits, build organic matter, and provide some drought and weed resistance. But this past year, I think we only had about 3% of our acres in cover crops. And so we've, like these other states in the upper Mississippi River Basin, we've got a long, long ways to go.
Well, is it true that some of the septic systems can also elevate groundwater nitrate concentration?
Well, this is true, but Iowa's a sparsely populated state, and so when the nutrient strategy was, when the science team delineated sources of nitrogen and phosphorus in the state's water, I think about 94% of the nitrogen is from non-point sources, which would mean primarily agriculture. But yes, we do have localized septic issues. I think still in Iowa we have on the order of maybe 400 to 500 communities. They're what would be classified as unsewered, and so they would be going into septic tanks perhaps, or some of these very small towns out in rural areas, they just flush into a tile line. We still have some of that, but as a fraction of the overall problem, that sort of thing is pretty small.
Now, did I understand you earlier? You said, or I think you said something about, maybe I'm using the wrong term here. Does the state have what we call reprocessing stations or someplace to help dilute this, or like vegetables?
No. So the municipal water supply in Des Moines has nitrate removal, and it's an ion exchange process. Works much like a zeolite softener in a home would. That treatment process was installed in 1992, I believe, in Des Moines. So it's been there for 27 years. And most communities now that would need to adopt a nitrate removal more than likely would go to some reverse osmosis treatment, which wasn't available in 1992. But no, we don't treat the river water. What's going down is going down the river is going to make it to the Gulf of Mexico.
So when did this get to be a level? I mean, how bad was it in Iowa? And did the government, which could be state, local, whatever, come to you guys and say, hey, we need some help in understanding all of this? And is that how your program was funded, or that's something separately that you're?
Well, we've known this has been a problem for a long, long time. Probably. So in the mid-'70s, there was a real transition here in agriculture. We used to have more diversity of crops here in Iowa. We had a lot of oats, for example. Iowa used to be the #1 oats producing state in the United States. We had wheat, we had alfalfa, these other sorts of things. And then, soybeans started coming in about 1960, and people don't realize, soybeans haven't been here that long. And, we've always grown a lot of corn here.
Yeah.
But the corn acres now are really not that much different than they were, say, in 1950. What's happened is soybeans have replaced all these other crops. And so the water budget for these crops is is quite a bit different than what it is for soybeans. We don't plant soybeans here until about the middle of May, and they harvest them, right after Labor Day. And so oats, for example, are growing very aggressively here in March and April. And so the water use patterns here associated with this transition to soybeans have been really favorable for more loss of nitrate. And so this is one of the things when we, in the mid-'70s then, we had this, Earl Butz was Secretary of Agriculture and sort of implored farmers to do this fence row to fence row strategy, and that's when we really saw the nitrate levels start increasing. And I think by 1980, we pretty much knew there was a problem here. Mm-hmm. And there was quite a bit of denial, I'd say, from about 1980 to the 1990s about, what was causing this and what we could do and so forth. And, this is a tough technological and sociological and economic and political problem. And, finally, 2012, the state has a strategy. And, of course, we had a situation in Chesapeake Bay where EPA went in and wrote a TMDL for the Chesapeake Bay. And so you have a situation there where you've got some regulation of the agricultural sector there in terms of water quality. And, of course, nobody wanted that here. There was a great fear that there would be a TMDL written for the Mississippi River. And so EPA allowed the states here in the upper Mississippi River Basin to go with these voluntary strategies in lieu of writing a TMDL for the Mississippi River.
Chris, can you, for some of our listeners who may not know, tell them what a TMDL is?
Well, TMDL stands for Total Maximum Daily Load, and it essentially limits the amount of a pollutant that can be introduced into a water body. And so under the Clean Water Act, we can impair various waters if they don't meet certain criteria. And if they don't meet that and they're defined as impaired, then the state regulatory agency usually writes a TMDL, and it determines all the sources of that pollutant in the water body, like a stream. And at least in theory, the state cannot issue any more NPDES permits that include a discharge of that pollutant. Now, of course, the Clean Water Act does not have very many provisions for regulation of non-point source pollution. And so, like the Raccoon River here in Iowa is highly impaired for nitrate. It probably has the highest nitrate concentration of any stream of its size in North America. There's a TMDL for the Raccoon River because Des Moines is using it for their drinking water supply, but the state has very little, regulatory tools at their disposal to, try to restrict the amount of nitrate entering the stream because the Clean Water Act doesn't have provisions for that. Now, if a big sewage treatment plant wanted to be built and discharged into the Raccoon, then the state would have.
Right.
But that isn't the case. It's a very rural area upstream of Des Moines. The population is very sparse. So the state is, it's just a tough problem. It's really difficult.
Yeah, and Des Moines is a pretty large town, right? I mean, how do smaller, the little small off the beaten track rural towns deal with water quality issues like this? I mean, do they have water treatment plants? And it's got to be an expensive issue for them.
Well, Des Moines, I think their utility supplies about 500,000 to 600,000 people. So we do have small towns that do have public water supplies. I think there's about 1,000 public water supplies in Iowa, and the most of those would be, of course, extremely small. Now, we knew a long time ago in Iowa that the groundwater in these rural areas was being impaired by not just nitrate, but some of these other things, E. coli and atrazine perhaps. And so, this has been 30 or 40 years ago now, and we knew this was happening. And so one of the things, a lot of these small towns abandoned their water systems and hooked up to rural water. And so I don't know if you guys know what rural water systems are, but it's a program that's been supported by the federal government to provide a centralized treatment, say, in one of the larger communities in a rural area, and then they pump the water out to great distances to farms and other communities. And so that has greatly improved the quality of water in these rural areas in Iowa. So we have some very large rural water systems that pump the water, maybe 100 miles or more to their customers.
And that's not that's not surface water, right? That's
it's both. Some of it would be surface water, some of it's groundwater.
Okay.
So southern Iowa, we have a lot of constructed lakes that provide a supply. We do have some good groundwater in Iowa, mainly eastern and northeastern Iowa. Western Iowa, we do have some trouble with our groundwater. But the small community that doesn't have access to rural water, those citizens would have to, they'd have to pony up to pay for treatment for their municipal water system. And of course, a lot of these communities, water and wastewater issues are really tough to deal with because the population in these towns is really elderly for the most part and declining.
Fixed incomes, and
so these are really hard problems.
These are tough. Well, a lot of people, are always worried about the common sources for nitrate in their diets. And, I think, 80 to 90% of the nitrate most people consume comes from vegetables. But I understand that it reduces, it's unlikely to cause any health problems because I think very little of the nitrate in vegetables is converted to nitrite. So that sort of saves
so there's really not much evidence that nitrate is harmful to adults.
Right.
And so it's, there's some people that have looked at that and have, made some sort of canalizing links, if you will, to bladder cancer, I think, in women over 50 and these sorts of things. But certainly the federal government has not seen fit to regulate nitrate because of that research.
Yeah, I know there was
So the risk...
No, go ahead.
But the risk to humans is just to infants, because infants, their digestive system isn't mature and they don't have the intestinal flora, if you will, that can process nitrogen, like an adult would. And so what happens is the nitrate in an infant's digestive system gets converted to nitrite, and then that competes with hemoglobin in the infant's blood, and that's what causes the blue baby syndrome.
Yeah,
but in adults, that's not an issue.
Yeah, I was reading something the other day from I'm trying to remember, the International Journal of Cancer, where some university overseas did a study saying nitrate in drinking water increases the risk of colorectal cancer. And that's what the study, that was published, I think, in February, March of 18. But again, that's just one report.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying it's impossible that nitrate in drinking water is harmful to adults, but it's not the main concern here. You're right. Much of the nitrate we get in our diet. There's certain foods that are very high in nitrate, spinach, for example, beets, some other things. And so, there is a bit of controversy that this dietary nitrate is processed by our body differently than the nitrate we consume in drinking water. But nonetheless, this is still a research topic and not much of a not much of a regulatory
Right.
issue, at least at this time.
I know the sodium nitrate they put in foods like meats, processed meats and hams and bacon and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that can affect people that have gout, and so they tell you to reduce. They tell you to reduce stuff in that. It's like anything you eat is bad now. Anything you drink is bad. It's just like I used to drink tons of Diet Cola, and my wife says you should look in the thing. It contains aspartame. And that's not good for your body either. So it's like, what can I eat now? There's nothing left to eat,
Mm-hmm.
at least in my world. So,
So, hey, Chris, I got a question for you based on the fact that you said that children, infants especially, more vulnerable than adults are. Are there any impacts that expectant mothers or pregnant women should look out for?
Well, if you live in a community that is violating the nitrate standard, then you're not going to want to make infant formula with the tap water. That's the main caution. But there's when utilities violate the nitrate standard, they have to notify their customers. And I would just say that the 10 part per million threshold that EPA has enforced has been there's no doubt it's been effective in safeguarding the population from this blue baby syndrome. There's just no doubt about that.
and I guess if the mother breastfed the child, as long as
would
she
not be an issue.
Yes, and especially because
right.
she'd have to drink an enormous amount of this water to do that.
Yeah. Right.
Wow. So how do people, how can people lower the most water agencies, the bigger ones, as you say, they already do what they have to do. But the little ones, if you need it tested, people would just call their water agency, and water agency, I would assume, tests it on a regular basis, as they
do.
But an individual in a small rural, like you were talking earlier, what would they do? Just take a sample and bring it to an outside lab and have them tested, or a university, or?
So we have a program in Iowa for testing for people like they have farmstead wells, and we call it the grants to counties, and so the state provides money to the counties, and the counties can use that to do testing of private wells, and those samples are collected by the county sanitarian, and they're sent to the state testing lab, which is here in Iowa City at the University of Iowa, and then that sample is tested for nitrate and bacteria, which are the two main contaminants in these rural wells. And so people can get their water tested very inexpensively or at no cost at all. And so there are mechanisms for people to ensure the safety of their water without having to spend a lot of money.
Well, aside from what you said, I think when people, organizations are accurately measuring what's happening in Iowa's watersheds, there's other factors that are included, like soil type, landscapes, weather, that would play impact on surface water and nitrate levels. Is that correct?
So that's right, and the main factor here is tile. And so not all of our fields are tiled, but Iowa was glaciated very recently. The north central part of the state, there was a glacier here only 12,000 years ago. And so when Europeans got here, much of the northern two-thirds of the state was wetlands and wet prairie and really unfarmable. And when they got here, they almost immediately started trying to drain that stuff. And by 1910, most of the drainage, most of the state had been drained in some way or another by 1910. Mm-hmm. And so by 1910, there was more money put into drainage here in Iowa than what was spent on the Panama Canal.
Wow. And
then there was a bit of a lull, and there was a fair amount of drainage put in, I think, in around the 1950s, and then we've had a big rush to put in more drainage here in the last 10 to 15 years, and there's a few reasons for that. One, it's gotten so much wetter. Iowa is much, much wetter now than it was, say, 80 years ago. And it continues to get wetter. Many of the climate stations here, are maybe about 1.5 times as much, are getting about 1.5 times as much rain as they got, 50, 75 years ago. And so the farmers are respond to that by putting in more tile. And there's also a fear that this installation of tile will eventually be regulated, and so they want to get it in before it's regulated. There's a lot of evidence that tile improves yields, especially in the first few years after it's installed. Land prices are higher for ground that has been tiled than has not been tiled, and so that's our main problem with the nitrate, is the drainage tile.
Wow. Well, you guys you contributed a lot to the science study in your state. I think you guys do a lot of it. I guess I heard there's like over 200 and something partners supporting the 60 plus rural and urban demonstration projects. And I mean, they've all been pretty successful from what I hear.
So, it's not a mystery about what works and what doesn't work on these practices. The issue is getting money to pay for them and to get them, implemented. And so, like wetlands, that's a constructed wetlands is a practice that farmers can get cost share to build a wetland on their land to intercept the tile water, and it will sequester the nitrate. So we know wetlands work, and we know that they're going to work within a certain boundary, maybe 40 to 70%, depending. But this is the best farmland in the world here, and not a lot of farmers want to give up 10 acres to put in a wetland.
Yeah.
The ones that do want to do that, they've already done.
Has the Congress representatives, your legislative representatives, been successful with the federal government, aside from the state, of getting additional funding for these kind of projects and so forth?
Well, of course, I heard you guys talking about EQIP before I came on. And,
right.
We have EQIP dollars come in, and there's other conservation programs, CRP, of course, which is probably the best. It's the one thing we know will work for sure, is land retirement. But then there's some other things, the wetland program and the various other conservation programs in the Farm Bill. And so, honestly, I got to tell you, we would not think that making these irrigation districts eligible for this EQIP money is a good thing. Because, farmers here would see that as sort of a zero-sum game, that, that money is intended, they feel the money is intended to reduce, pollutant transport from these areas that are sort of water-rich. And sending that to an irrigation district, we recognize the need to conserve water and do that as sustainably as possible. But, that I think most farmers here in Iowa would say that wasn't really the spirit of the EQIP program. And so when those monies go from the Corn Belt states, out west to irrigation districts, there's just no doubt that that's going to have an effect on pollutant transport to the Mississippi River and the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah. Chris, other than the EPA, which I've mentioned before, and of course the work that the University of Iowa is doing in the 70 measuring stations, how would you describe the university's partnering with other regulatory agencies other than yourselves and the EPA? Are there others that help you?
So we work a lot with USGS. They have an office here in Iowa City, and they also do similar types of monitoring that we do. Of course, we work with DNR, and they have funded some of the purchase of the sensor equipment, Iowa DNR. We work with the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship, we call IDALS. We work with people, researchers at Iowa State University and other research institutions. And so, yeah, this is just an enormous problem.
Right.
And you've got to be able to, we always talk about this coalition of the willing. Who can we work with here?
Yeah.
And that's what we do.
And it must affect surrounding states as well, Nebraska and other regional
areas.
Well,
Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, Indiana, Ohio, that's the drained area of the Corn Belt, and that's where the nutrient issues are primarily.
Right. So
Nebraska, you do have some groundwater issues because
right.
they have sandier soils there, a lot of irrigated corn, and so then you get this percolation down into the aquifer. So Nebraska, it's more of a groundwater issue.
Other people who are be interested in looking at more of this information, you mentioned your website before. Can you tell us exactly, for our listeners, what that website is and where do people go?
Well, if you Google Iowa WQIS, it'll take you right there, and you'll get to a map, and you can click on the dots, and you can see what the water quality is at the various stations. Right now. Now, in the wintertime, we do pull some of the sensors, so they're not all out there right now.
Yeah.
Because our rivers do freeze over.
Yeah, but it's real time.
It's real time. Yep.
Well, this is great because it just like the dirty water we have out in California. Most people don't know what's going on behind the scenes with people like you or doing all the science stuff, and I learned a lot looking up stuff that you've written and things, and I'm super impressed, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show, and I know our listeners are going to like that. Any closing words here? Because we're coming up to our news hour.
Nope, I really don't. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, Chris. It was great. Appreciate you spending some time with us on the air.
And enjoy the warm weather you have.
Yeah. All right. Very good.
All right. Thanks a lot, and happy holidays.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. All right, we're up against our NBC News Hour that we have to turn it over to. So, Chris, any words of wisdom?
Yes, I would say everybody's got to always remember to
think blue. Good night, everybody. We'll talk to you next week. Have a great week.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3.